The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hi, and welcome to a very fabulous special episode of Gays of Our Lives. Coming right off of Halloween and Spooky Month and starting to go into the holidays. We have some fun things to talk about today, and that topic is drag. All about drag today. So without further ado, I'm going to let my special guests introduce themselves, and we're going to jump into some hot topics about everything drag.
Hi, so my name is Xibalba Oniguma. I am 27 years old and I'm from New Bedford, Mass. I'm one of the older, more seasoned queens that's been around in the area for quite a while. I'm like 10 years old in drag. I've been doing this since I was like 17.
Yep.
So, you know, my whole life I've basically been working on costumes. My mom is like really big on Halloween, and my whole family, and like every year we do like these huge extravagant like costumes and like group costumes, and you know, it's just been part of my life this forever, and it's always going to be.
Yeah, so like, I want to talk a little bit about that. So how did you get into drag? Like, what was the first moment? Like, that was that aha moment, like, oh, I love this, I'm going to continue with this.
I remember watching RuPaul's Drag Race growing up, and you know, where the scenes were like very grainy, and like RuPaul had like that weird
the
Vaseline
season one filter.
The Vaseline on the lens, you know, like. So I would super inspired by like a lot of the queens like Nina Flowers and like Chad Michaels and like people like that, like super professional and like perfectionists, and their costumes were amazing. Like then Boulay Brothers and stuff like really kicked off, and they've always been around, like Peaches Christ, and like those people were like huge inspiration. So then when I decided to come out, I was like, oh, I can do that. So I started dressing up, and at first I was like very like grungy, like club kid aesthetic. Like, you know, I had like, Boulay Brothers would kill me if they found out I was wearing, you know, platform shoes and stuff, but they'd be like, are you a sadist? But now I've like completely evolved. Like I try to constantly change and one-up myself every single time. So like if I do a look and I'm like, I can definitely revamp that and do it better, I definitely will.
Yeah. So something I think that people really should know about drag is that it is an art form. And it's been around for a really long time. Like, this is not new, right? This is not just come out. Like, RuPaul kind of really cracked it into mainstream, but it's been around for a really, really long time, right? We're talking Paris is Burning. It's a documentary. You can watch it on Netflix. Actually, Pride Committee is probably going to do a showing of that movie soon that shows kind of the original ballroom scene where drag kind of really met with those club kids from the 70s and 80s to kind of really have a scene and a place to kind of express ourselves in beautiful and big, bold ways. And I think that more people really have to kind of remember its history if they want to know a little bit more about what drag is at its core. So what is, if I had to ask you the basic question, what is drag to you?
Drag to me is definitely art, but I think it's more like an art subjective. So I like to think that art, it could be whatever you want. Like a lot of people think drag and they think, oh, it's just a guy or men dressing up as female impersonators and stuff. But like when you really look at it, it's not so black and white because there's a lot of stuff in the middle. Like you have drag kings, you have like burlesque dancers that do drag and stuff, and like, you know, you have your trans performers. Like it's definitely evolved more in the years, especially now with like a lot of these younger people actually going out and doing things that are out of the norm. Like before it was very like, you know, traditional with the way, you know, everybody had the big hair, and, you know, it was very like, you know, the gowns and like the pageants, and now it's more like social media mainstream, and like everybody sees everybody, so now everybody's inspired by everybody, and it's just, it's literally blown up like in such an amazing way, honestly, that now when it comes to drag, basically anybody can do it. And it lets you, and like a lot of the people come in and they let you know, like, this is for everybody. You know, it's an art, you know, it's entertainment. I always tell people, like with me, I always like to think of myself more like a glamour clown. Like,
I like that.
I feel like I don't try to go out and be as what some people say is passable. I like to just be a character. I create a character, and then that's what I am at the night. So like my pronouns and stuff, when people ask me, I tell them you could call me they, them in drag, or he, she, whatever you want to call me, because I'm not too worried about that, because my character, their perception of me could be different depending on the person.
Yep.
So I could be a he to one person, a she to another.
Yep. And I love that you bring that up, because people get, we had a whole show on pronouns and the importance of pronouns. And they are really important, but one of the things that I think drag does, and drag does wonderfully, is kind of play with the fluidity there, right? One of my godchildren, actually, I was a fairy princess for our spooky Halloween costume party on the 22nd, and they came up to me and they're like, well, do I call you auntie or uncle when you're in drag? And I'm like, call me whatever is comfortable for you. Because to them, you know, they're coming up into their own, and they're trans, and they're trying to figure out themselves, so pronouns are really important. But what drag does is it blurs all of the lines and lets it be more of an art versus just a strict thing about us. Yes, I'm a person who has done drag, but you're still a person, right? You're still a person underneath. And then you got into the other thing, so we're gonna get controversial today. It's gonna be fun. So one of the big words you said here was passable, right? And I think that there is a lot of tumultuousness in the drag community, and sometimes in the trans and non-binary community, about what passes, right? So are you a he, she? Are you a they, them? You have horns? What am I supposed to call you, right? And there's a lot of that kind of, and I know you've seen it, and I want to talk about it a little bit here, about that kind of almost mean-spirited kind of competition in drag. Because have you experienced some of this?
Absolutely. I've definitely, like, I have to say, more recent now, I've actually gotten more drag friends and like people, like little drag family and stuff. But in all the years, I really struggled to be welcomed into a community and finding shows and like being involved in like things, because a lot of people felt like I was like a little bit much, and then they feel kind of less than. But I always was the type of person who was like, no, like, you know, I'll help you, like, if you want to, like, make an outfit or something, you know. And, like, people would be like, yeah, but then I never hear from anybody, and then I was kind of brushed to the side. Like, in Worcester for a long time, and in Providence, in the beginning, it was really hard for me to, like, be welcomed into the community because I was just different. And they're very cliquey. Like, drag queens, and they tend to be very cliquey. They'll stay with only the people that they deem cool or that they want to work with. And if they don't know you, they feel like there's no room for you. And I kind of think that that's kind of messed up, because there's a lot of people who are very talented that could actually do a lot. And, you know, when stuff like that happens, we all lose, because now you're kind of preventing anybody else from enjoying that art form. Because now you're like the locations and stuff, like a lot of queens have home bars or home clubs, and they prevent a lot of people from being able to get bookings or like tip spots and stuff to be able to do show their art, because they control it. They know, they're like, oh, well, you know, I don't like you, or you're friends with another queen that doesn't like you, and I'm their friend, so I don't want you around. And I think like it shouldn't be like that, because things could be way more fruitful if we continue to just, you know, be more inclusive and make it so that more people can actually be a part of that community. Because who knows, that queen that you're over there saying, oh, we don't want a part of, and they're a baby queen, they look crazy now, they could probably fly right above you in the future, and you don't know that, and you treat them bad, and now you're gonna see them later on. It's gonna be too late. They're gonna be like, you know, you kind of messed up. When I wanted to be your friend, you brushed me under the rug.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I feel like, because I feel like there's with RuPaul kind of really exploding into the scene, right? There's Drag Race in America, Drag Race Canada, Drag Race UK, Drag Race France, Drag Race Spain, Drag Race Italy, Drag Race Philippines, Drag Race Thailand, Drag Race The Switch, which is South America. It really is a huge global phenomenon. And I think what happened with that is because now there's an economic imperative with drag to get those shows, to get those bookings, where you can make good money, but if you don't get the shows, you don't get the bookings, you can't make the money in that kind of performance space. So it becomes that kind of weird, kind of overly competitive culture that I think you're 100% right. I think A, breaks people down, and B, alienates people who could be the next thing, who have something to offer the scene, who have gifts that they want to share. Because drag, just so people know, drag's not cheap. It is not easy to do, right? Like, makeup is not cheap, clothing is not cheap, right? Materials,
like hair.
The time, the skill that you have to put in to figure out how to do hair, how to do makeup.
Hours of individual stoning and sewing, and like with my shoes, like I had to individually just like make this, like the cover, the pants, cutting the foam, like, you know, it's a lot of work. Like, yeah, you can just throw a couple things together, but it's still a lot of work when you have to purchase all this stuff, and then, you know, working regular day-to-day jobs, and then also doing drag in the same weeks. You know, like it's a lot of work for a lot of people. Some people get overwhelmed, very much so.
Yeah, and so that's where, right, perfect segue into drag queens coming out of the club, is how I like to kind of say it, right? Because a lot of drag queens started in clubs and home bars, right? So I'm sure everyone has already seen it. The Fall Over Pride Committee, we are hosting a spectacular drag queen story time with the Godfather, aka Angel, who you actually know from back, and it was on one of my episodes with their lovely partner Jamie. And it is disheartening at best to see the comments that we have been getting here around that drag is just about, it's all pure adult entertainment. Doing drag is immediately sexual, all these kind of things that we hear, and it's very frustrating. So I wanted to give this stunning drag queen a chance to kind of help me rebuke some of these things. Like, how do you feel about some of these comments?
I feel like a lot of the comments that some of the people are saying about drag queen story time, and it's not just like here, it's everywhere. It's like, I feel like a lot of these people are taking like one or two things that they've seen on the internet and running with it and saying, oh, like these people are groomers, you know, like drag queen story time is supposed to be a moment for parents and children to come together, you know, do a couple activities, and it's like a positive learning experience. So how does something that's positive turn to something negative and turn to, oh, we're sexual deviants, or we're over here trying to, you know, make these kids gay or whatever? Like, it's like, these are children we're talking about. Like, no, I don't know if anybody else, but I've never seen like drag queens actively go out and dressing like how they would in a bar or a club when they go to these. Like, a lot of them are wearing like very like generic,
princess
like
dresses,
like gowns and like full, like, you know, like one of my friends from Boston, Just JP, amazing person, has done drag queen story time, and he wears, or they wear, like, you know, covered up to make it seem like, you know, presentable for children, because, you know, it's true, you're not gonna be around children wearing adult attire, you know, a leotard or like a skimpy outfit. It's just inappropriate, but that's not happening. Now, if that would make sense, saying, oh yeah, maybe they're sexualizing it if they were doing that, but a lot of them ain't doing that. It's just people coming in, a lot of the people saying stuff too, they don't even have children. They're just insane religious like figures that just want to say something just to say something. Like, I watched a video where they literally came into a building and they were just yelling, groomers, groomers, and like the kids were crying and stuff. I'm like, you know, you guys are being more detrimental and traumatic to these children than that person reading a book about being kind to a person, or the differences about being different or something. Like, they don't see that. And I feel like a lot of the time people don't want to sit there and acknowledge that. Like, for example, there is a controversial person named Desmond Is Amazing. He's a very, very young underage kid, and they have him in videos dancing on stage, getting tipped by grown men. I think that's inappropriate. And that would fall under the lines of something that would be similar to be called that. But a drag queen story time wouldn't equate to the same type of subject. So like that is completely different than what's going on with these children being read to at a library.
Something my mom always used to say, and I actually try to teach it with a lot of my students, is time and place, right? Time and place. 'Cause let's be serious. If you go to a bar at 1 a.m., yeah, you might see a girl in a leotard flipping, you know, making inappropriate jokes, but that's at 1 a.m. at a bar. That is not our Fall River Public Library this Saturday, November 5th at 10:30 a.m., right? Where we're gonna have a super cute craft and we're gonna read some cute stories and we're gonna have a really good time kind of celebrating diversity. The last episode that we did with Gays of Our Lives, we talked with Allison from the Family Resource Center, because a lot of these religious people truly believe that LGBT people can't form families, which is a really heinous and awful thing to say. That somebody like me couldn't form a family with a partner, adopt a child, or have a child in different ways that you can foster, adopt, surrogacy, all these other ways that people can form their own families. Not that I'm not my own family by myself. I'm just saying I'm also a person and I am a family. I have friends, I have my sister, I have community. So it's, you know, I try really hard not to take the stuff personally, but when certain Republican city committees have come after me, literally calling me a pedophile, calling me a groomer, when I work with kids, like, so that's actually not only offensive to me personally, but it's actually like offensive to me professionally.
Yeah, that's borderline slander at that moment too.
Exactly, right? So this, because they have no idea. And then these people, you know, who are saying this, who are saying we're groomers, we're pedophiles, they never show up, right? They don't actually come. They don't watch, we live stream it, right? They know what our queens are wearing, because we vet our queens. They're all background checked, right? You know, we're partnered with the library on this as a literacy program. And I don't think that there's enough recognition for the fun and the learning of it, because we're too busy getting caught up in what's the sex of it all, right? That it has to be sexy. I know one of the things I brought up on a lot of the messaging boards, because one of my favorite movies growing up was Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, I love that movie.
Love that movie, right? Robin Williams was not sexual drag queen in that. They were a drag queen because they were trying to get back to their family, right? And they did it as a fun, campy, entertaining way of showing some rifts within families, right? That's what that was. And that's what I think a lot of people kind of miss about drag when they're too busy equating it to a 1 a.m. bar scene and not understanding something like Drag Queen Storytime, not understanding something like having a show here where we can showcase our art and talk about things within the community. Because we're not perfect, right? The LGBT community, we are not a monolith. We're not, you know, we're not all the same page. But I can personally tell you, I have never met anybody ever in the LGBT community who thinks that minor attracted persons is a thing.
Absolutely not.
No, nope, we're not going, no, we're not even going down that at all, right? Our big thing is 18 and consent. Once you're 18 and you can consent, you should be able to go to a drag show, you should be able to start living your life as your authentic self as an adult. But, you know, some crazy person on a TED Talk does not equate to the entire LGBT community.
Exactly.
You know, I've been in the LGBT community my entire life. You know, I'm the president of the Pride Committee. I know of some amazing queens. I work with LGBT youth, and at no point was pedophilia okay or acceptable, right? That's just not a thing. So we need to really take that time to separate those two things completely out.
Yeah, because they're right now, the way that things are going, they're really trying to make it part of the community, and a lot of us disagree with that. Most of us, if not all of us, agree with that. Like, that's an attack on our community by people who do not like us. They're trying to, that's one way for them to be able to call us groomers, call us pedophiles, by including those people in. And then you have people over here like, I'm a minor attracted person. No, you're sick.
Yes.
And that's the reality of it. And we do not agree with that. Like, are there people that do weird things? Yes, there are. But one bad apple doesn't ruin it for the entire group. And many of us are against that. So the fact that these people are actively trying to make it a thing and being like, well, you know, they're part of you guys. You guys had it. It says plus for a reason, so that must mean they have a right to be part of that. No, they don't have a right, because each and every one of those, you know, LGBTQ plus, you know, each one means something to a specific person in this community. Those people are not part of our community. Like, yeah, they may be gay, but when you're like trying to go and be with a minor and don't think there's nothing wrong with that, and then you're going out with t-shirts that say, oh, love is love no matter what age, like, yeah, no, you're sick.
No, yeah.
You're absolutely sick. Like, a lot of us would probably fight you, like, on site.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know where these people, like a lot of far right people and some left people, they're just running with that. And I'm like, you guys don't use your mind and see like that what they're doing here? Like they're actively trying to label us this and finding any reason to be able to do that. And that's the easiest way for them to do that, by incorporating those people with us.
Yes. And so let me be clear, you know, we talked about this before. The lesson here is LGBTQIA+. It's generally the acceptable thing, right? Which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, or asexual, right? Now, the reason why we add a plus was not because we're the alphabet mafia. Get an original, better name.
Right. Oh, I hate that.
Like, no, the reason why is because being part of the LGBT plus community, it encompasses a lot of things about us personally and interpersonally. It covers things about our body, our relationships to our body parts, how we have relationships, whether we're monogamous or polyamorous, right? What level of romanticism that we expect within our relationships before we say have sex with somebody, right? It encompasses all of these really big identity things. That's why when people are like, oh, you make it your whole personality. It's not about making it our whole personality, but it is a big part of who we are because all of these letters have been brandished as wrong, immoral, an abomination, pedophiles, all these things that go on and on for a really long time. And people have to understand that that kind of hate and vitriol can only really be combated with love and education, which is why we do things like Drag Queen Storytime, which is why I was really excited to have a show where I can have a platform like this. This is why I was really excited to have a stunning drag queen on here, so people can see that we're just people living our best lives, expressing ourselves in the best ways we know how, and that we are going to continue to be here, be out, and we're going to continue to repudiate all of these people who think that we're something we're not, who think that we're minor attracted children or that we're recruiting children because we can't have children of our own. Like, which is, it's just crazy. So I just wanted to give you a few extra minutes here before we wrap up in a couple about what if we could say something in the nicest terms possible, what do we want to say to some of those people who are commenting on our Drag Queen Storytime posts about how we're wrong, we're awful, we're evil? How do we combat that with as nice as we can?
Educate yourselves. Talk to these people that you think are groomers and stuff without yelling, without thinking simple-mindedly what you've seen on social media and stuff. Actively ask these people questions without attacking them. Like, maybe you might actually learn a thing or two and become a better person all in the same sentence, you know? Like, I feel like we're very disconnected when it comes to communication with like cisgender people and like, you know, straight people and stuff like that, and like religious people, because they refuse to acknowledge us for who we are. They just want us to be predators. But I feel like if they sat down and gave maybe a moment or two to speak to a few of us, their minds might possibly change, you know? I just feel like a lot of us are willing to talk, but when you're getting yelled at, you're gonna get yelled at back, because we've constantly been marginalized and treated bad our whole lives. Like, I don't think I've ever met a gay person that wasn't bullied growing up. So then you get older and you're being bullied again by society. Like, I feel like they should definitely maybe give us an opportunity to speak, and we give them a chance to speak without tearing each other down midway through the conversation, or saying we're gonna go to hell or we're gonna burn and all this, and you know, like that's not a conversation to me. But if we were like how we were to sit down and talk, like I would talk to somebody, I would like to know, but I'm not gonna allow a person to sit there and be like, oh, you're a pedophile, you're a predator, you dress like this, oh, you don't know what you want, you don't know what you want to be, you're a he, she, or whatever. Like that's just not gonna work.
It's true, because here's the thing. So I'm out here, I do the show, I do events. My thing is I will always meet someone where they're at, and I will always be a friend, and I will always try to educate. But the second you start attacking me personally, you're just gonna get my sassy sarcasm, right? That's what I've got for you. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't actually engage, then I can't actually help you. I can't educate you or tell you that I'm not confused, that it took me a long time to figure out exactly who I am, and I am the way that I am because of a million different social and biological factors. I technically had straight parents, but I'm very queer. Right, so it's not just like straight parents can only raise straight kids, and gay parents are only going to raise gay kids, and all these other kind of tropes that you hear.
Yeah, it's terrible. I can't believe it's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, but I've seen women being kissed on Disney movies and stuff like that my whole life, and I still came out the same way. So seeing two guys or two girls kissing, yeah, that's just not how it works. And it blows my mind because they're like, oh, they're turning everything gay. I've had heterosexuality shoved down my throat my entire life.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but how many times did we see guys in Disney movies kiss unconscious women? Unconsenting unconscious women. Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, like, come on.
The movie Little Rascals was literally about a 6 and 7 year old boy and girl trying to go on a date.
Yeah.
And that's all fine, right?
Yeah,
But
and they had them kissing and stuff like that. Like,
So it's not about sexualization, right? Because heterosexual people have sexualized all of it forever, right? Sex sells, that's the whole thing, right? With sex sells. But that doesn't mean just because we're queer, we're automatically sexual or sexualized. People are doing that to us to try to create this division within us or to try to make us feel worse about ourselves, which is just not where we're at right now, right? Because there's still a lot of people who are lost to this hatred and violence. In the last couple of minutes here, I also want to mention we have our Transgender Walk of Remembrance on November 20th, 12 to 3 p.m. at Battleship Cove. It is our second annual walk. Because in the last 10 years or so, while queer people are getting more visible, there's still plenty of hatred that leads to violence and murder. So just because we're visible here in America does not mean that all of the battles have been won. I always try to remind people that there are still more countries that actively jail and kill gay people than allow us to get married. Right? So people have to remember some of these things, that just because we are now living out loud, we're doing so we don't have to live in shame and so that we don't have to constantly be a target. If we can connect with those kids, those young kids who need someone like, oh, look, they're queer like me. Like, I knew I was not heterosexual when I was like 6, 7. And I've mentioned this before, I was called a faggot early enough. Then if I can be called that early, then people can start learning about it that early.
Yeah.
That does not mean explicitly. There's all sorts of development appropriate ways to do that.
Right, you can talk about things and like I know me, like I would have loved to be able to have somebody, or I've seen any type of representation of something that wasn't heterosexual growing up, because I was very confused and I had nobody to really talk about that, and there wasn't anybody. Like, now we have a lot of stuff that people can go online and see people like that and learn from them, but before it wasn't like that. So I had to just kind of like deal with things as I just got older slowly and just kind of hope for the best. And I mean, I definitely came out fine, but I just felt like I really would have enjoyed and appreciated having something like that like Drag Queen Storytime or something like that when I was younger, because I did have a lot of questions when I remember seeing a gay person for the first time, and I was like, I feel like that sometimes. I felt like I felt similar to that person in a way. Like something, I don't know what it was, but something made me think. Like I was like, I feel like that person kind of reminds me of me. And then I was just like, wow, like, wasn't like I was able to talk to anybody about it. I just kind of just kept it to myself. And then, being in the closet all the way for like many, many years and coming out at 16, and then, dealing with even worse stuff after coming out. Because I think, honestly, it was worse coming out than it was being secret.
All of that.
Yeah, losing friends.
Because this is, so because I could talk about this forever. I know we only got like a minute left. Because I think our thought here is that representation matters.
It does.
Being able to see ourselves matters. Being able to have a safe space matters. Being able to say gay matters. This debate of education versus indoctrination needs to be re-understood as us opening up to all of the beautiful, wondrous things that we can get out of diversity. And that's really what we're here for. So again, this Saturday, November 5th at 10:30 a.m. at the Fall River Public Library for our Drag Queen Storytime. And of course, we'll be back next month with another fabulous episode of Gays of Our Lives. Thank you so much to my stunning queen.
Thank you.
Thank you to BCC and Michelle. And we will wrap it up now. I think we're almost on time.